The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner flickered, casting uneven shadows across the checkered floor. It was 3:17 a.m., that peculiar hour when the world seems suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. The exhausted night owls had gone home, and the early risers hadn't yet appeared. In this liminal space, only two figures remained. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In the corner booth sat Dr. Chen, his fingers wrapped around a coffee mug that had long gone cold. Papers were scattered across the table, equations and diagrams bleeding into coffee. Ring stains. His eyes burned from staring at the same problem for hours, a computational bottleneck that threatened to derail his research team's entire project at MIT's Advanced Computing Lab. The second figure moved between tables, wiping surfaces and refilling salt shakers. Torres had been on her feet for nearly 8 hours, but her movements remained precise and efficient. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and beneath her apron, she wore a faded t-shirt from a community college she'd never been able to afford to attend. As Emma approached Dr. Chen's table, she noticed the frustrated creases in his forehead deepening. "Refill?" she asked, coffee pot already tilted. The professor nodded without looking up. "Thanks." Emma poured the coffee and should have moved on. There were still tables to clean and prep work for the morning shift. But something on Dr. Chen's papers caught her eye. A familiar pattern. A recursive function that reminded her of something she'd been tinkering with on her laptop during breaks. "You're approaching it wrong," she said before she could stop herself. Dr. Chen's head snapped up, eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." Emma froze. She'd crossed a line. Customers didn't appreciate waitresses commenting on their private work, especially not at 3 in the morning. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. She gestured vaguely at his diagrams. "Your algorithm is forcing sequential processing when you could be parallelizing those operations." Dr. Chen stared at her, coffee forgotten. "You understand these equations?" Emma's cheeks flushed. "I should get back to work." "No, wait." He shuffled the papers, revealing more of the diagram. "What did you mean about parallelizing?" Before she could answer, the cook called from the kitchen. "Torres, order up." "I have to go," Emma said, already backing away. But Dr. Chen wasn't ready to let go. "I'll be here until you finish your shift," he said, his voice suddenly animated. "Please, just 5 minutes of your time after." Emma nodded hesitantly and returned to her duties, already regretting her impulsive comment. Who was she to correct someone's work? She had no degree, no formal training, just countless hours teaching herself to code on a second-hand laptop while her roommates slept. The next 3 hours crawled by. Emma delivered plates of early morning pancakes to truckers, refilled coffee, cups, and wiped down counters. All the while, she could feel Dr. Chen's gaze following her, curious and expectant. When her shift finally ended at 6 a.m., Emma untied her apron with trembling hands. She could slip out the back door. The professor would never find her, but something propelled her toward his booth instead. Dr. Chen had cleared the table of everything except a single sheet of paper. "Show me," he said simply, offering her a pen. Emma hesitated, then sat down. She took the pen and began to sketch, her handwriting neat despite her exhaustion. "Your current approach is creating this bottleneck here," she explained, circling a section of his diagram. "But if you restructure it like this..." Her pen moved quickly, confidently, drawing new connections. "You can process these operations simultaneously, reducing your computation time exponentially." Dr. Chen watched, in stunned silence. When Emma finished, he studied her work for a long moment before asking, "Where did you learn this?" Emma shrugged. "Nowhere, really. Online tutorials, free courses, practice. I like solving puzzles." This isn't just solving puzzles, Dr. Chen said, his voice quiet but intense. This is brilliant. Emma laughed nervously. It's just basic parallel processing. No, Dr. Chen shook his head firmly. What you've done here is far from basic. My team has been stuck on this problem for months. He paused, studying her with new interest. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, by the way. I lead the computational efficiency research team at MIT. Emma Torres, she replied, suddenly aware of her wrinkled uniform and the coffee stains on her sneakers. Emma, would you consider coming to my lab just to discuss this further? I could compensate you for your time. The invitation seemed surreal. Emma's immediate instinct was to decline. Her reality was double shifts and counting tips, not MIT, research labs. But the earnestness in Dr. Chen's expression gave her pause. I work again tomorrow night, she said finally. Maybe the morning after? Dr. Chen beamed. Perfect. He scribbled his number and the lab address on a napkin. 9 a.m. Thursday. Ask for me at the front desk. Emma tucked the napkin into her pocket, certain that this strange interlude would dissolve in the morning light like a forgotten dream. But Thursday morning found Emma standing outside the gleaming glass entrance of MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. She'd changed her outfit 4 times before settling on the plainest, most professional clothes she owned, black pants and a blue button-down shirt she'd bought for job interviews. The security guard at the desk looked skeptical when she asked for Dr. Chen, but made the call. Minutes later, the professor appeared, his face lighting up when he spotted her. You came, he exclaimed, as if he'd half expected her to disappear. Come on back. The team is eager to meet you. Emma followed him through a labyrinth of corridors, each lined with posters depicting complex algorithms and circuit designs. Students and researchers hurried past, absorbed in conversations filled with technical terms that Emma recognized from her late-night coding sessions. Dr. Chen led her into a large, open laboratory where a diverse group of people clustered around workstations. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They looked up as Emma entered, curiosity evident in their expressions. Everyone, Dr. Chen announced, this is Emma Torres, the person I told you about. 6 pairs of eyes examined her with varying degrees of skepticism and interest. A tall woman with close-cropped hair stepped forward, hand extended. Alicia Patel, she introduced herself. Marcus has been unusually cryptic about you. She's the solution to our parallelization problem, Dr. Chen said, guiding Emma to a whiteboard covered in familiar diagrams, expanded versions of what she'd seen in the diner. Alicia raised an eyebrow. Really? And your background is in the food service, Emma replied, straightening her shoulders. I'm a waitress at Midnight Diner. The room fell silent. Someone snickered. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. Emma, would you mind showing them what you showed me? Emma hesitated, then stepped forward. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up a marker, but steadied as she began to draw. The diagram flowed from her mind to the board with a fluidity that surprised even her. As she explained her approach, technical terms she'd only read in books now tumbled from her lips with unexpected ease. When she finished, the room remained silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. The snickering had stopped. A young man with glasses whistled softly. That's not how I would have approached it at all, but it could work. It will work, Dr. Chen said confidently. Emma, would you be willing to help us implement this, as a paid consultant, of course? Emma blinked. I have shifts at the diner. We can work around your schedule, Dr. Chen assured her. This project is too important, and your insight is too valuable to pass up. And so began Emma's double life. By day, she sat among MIT's brightest minds, translating her intuitive understanding of algorithms into practical solutions. By night, she served burgers and poured coffee, her mind still whirring with the day's coding challenges. The team's initial skepticism faded as Emma proved herself again and again. Her approach to parallel computing wasn't just novel, it was revolutionary, combining efficiency with an elegant simplicity that the more academically trained researchers had overlooked. But not everyone was convinced. One afternoon, Emma overheard a conversation between Alicia and another researcher named James. "It's a fluke," James was saying. "Chen's so desperate for a breakthrough, he's pinning his hopes on a waitress with no formal training." "Her code works," Alicia countered, "for now. But what happens when we scale up? She doesn't have the theoretical foundation to understand the implications." Emma slipped away before they noticed her. The words stung because they echoed her own fears. What if her solutions were just lucky guesses? What if she was setting herself up for a spectacular public failure? That evening, as Emma refilled salt shakers after her shift, Beth, the diner's manager, approached her. "You've been different lately," Beth observed. "Distracted. Is everything okay?" Emma considered deflecting, but found herself wanting to share. "I've been helping a research team at MIT with coding." Beth's eyes widened. "Coding? Since when do you code?" "Since forever," Emma admitted. "It's always been my thing. I just never had the chance to do anything with it." "And now MIT wants your help?" Beth laughed in disbelief. "That's incredible, Emma. Why are you still here?" "Because this is my real job," Emma replied. "The MIT thing is temporary. Once they realize I don't belong there, it'll end." Beth frowned. "Who says you don't belong?" Emma didn't answer, but the question lingered as she finished her closing duties. 2 weeks into her consulting work, Dr. Chen called Emma into his office. She arrived expecting questions about her latest code contribution, but instead found him beaming with excitement. "We've been invited to present at the International Conference on Parallel Processing in Boston next month," he announced. "And I want you to co-present with me." Emma's stomach dropped. Present, in front of people. "In front of the leading minds in our field," Dr. Chen confirmed. "This is a big deal, Emma. Your algorithm could change how we approach computational efficiency in AI systems." "My algorithm," Emma repeated faintly. When had it become hers? "I can't," she said finally. "I'm not qualified. I don't have credentials. No one will take me seriously." "Your work speaks for itself," Dr. Chen insisted, "and you explain complex concepts more clearly than most PhDs I know." Emma shook her head. "There must be someone else on the team." "It has to be you," Dr. Chen said firmly. "You're the heart of this breakthrough. Think about it at least." Emma promised she would, but as she walked back through the lab, she felt the weight of eyes on her. James was watching from his workstation, his expression unreadable. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly, returning to his screen. That night at the diner was unusually busy. Emma moved on autopilot, her mind consumed with Dr. Chen's request. The idea of standing before experts, presenting work that had come from her untrained mind, it seemed absurd, terrifying. During her break, Emma retreated to the back alley with her laptop. She opened her code and stared at it, searching for flaws, for the inevitable mistake that would expose her as a fraud. "What are you doing?" Emma jumped. Lily, another waitress, stood in the doorway, cigarette in hand. "Just checking something," Emma replied, closing her laptop. Lily sat beside her on the concrete step. "Beth told me about your MIT gig. Pretty impressive for someone who couldn't afford community college." There was no malice in Lily's tone, just a matter-of-factness that made Emma smile ruefully. "Yeah, well, it won't last." "Why not?" Because I don't have a degree, because I learned from YouTube videos and free online courses while everyone else there has fancy diplomas from schools I couldn't even dream of applying to. Lily exhaled a stream of smoke. Sounds like you're the one with the problem, not them. Emma frowned. What do you mean? They sort you out, right? They want your help. You're the one convinced you don't belong. Lily stood, cigarette finished. Just something to think about. The next day, Emma arrived at the lab earlier than usual. To her surprise, James was already there, hunched over his keyboard. "Morning," she said cautiously. James looked up, startled. "Oh, hi." His eyes returned to his screen immediately. Emma began setting up at her temporary workstation, trying to ignore the awkwardness. After a few minutes, James cleared his throat. "I've been reviewing your algorithm," he said without looking at her, "for the presentation." Emma tensed. And I don't understand how you came up with it." His tone wasn't accusatory, just genuinely puzzled. "It's not building on any existing frameworks I'm familiar with. It's like..." He hesitated. "It's like you approached the problem without any of the conventional constraints." "Because I didn't know what the constraints were supposed to be," Emma admitted. James finally turned to face her. "That's what makes it brilliant." Emma blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "Your lack of formal training," James continued. "It's not a weakness. It's why you could see a solution we couldn't." He actually smiled, the first time Emma had seen him do so. "I was wrong about you." Before Emma could respond, the lab door opened and the rest of the team began filtering in. James returned to his work as if their conversation had never happened, but something had shifted. A small crack had appeared in the wall of Emma's self-doubt. That afternoon, Dr. Chen assembled the team for a progress update. As researchers shared their contributions, Emma found herself paying special attention to how they presented their work, their confidence, their terminology, their ability to field questions. When her turn came, Emma stood hesitantly. "I've been refining the core algorithm to improve scalability," she began, her voice quiet. "Speak up, Torres," Alicia called from the back. "Some of us are getting old and deaf." There was gentle laughter, and Emma smiled despite herself. "I've been working on scalability," she repeated louder this time. She brought up her code on the main screen and began walking through her changes. As she spoke, Emma felt something unexpected. Enjoyment. She liked explaining her work, liked seeing understanding dawn on her colleagues' faces, liked the back and forth of technical questions that pushed her thinking further. By the end of her presentation, Emma had made a decision. She found Dr. Chen afterward and said simply, "I'll do it. The conference." His face broke into a wide smile. "Excellent. We'll start preparing next week." That night at the diner, Emma moved through her shift with new purpose. When her break came, instead of collapsing in the back room, she pulled out her laptop and began sketching ideas for her presentation. Beth passed by and paused, peering over Emma's shoulder. "Still at it, huh?" Emma nodded without looking up. "I'm presenting at a conference next month." "In that case," Beth said thoughtfully, "maybe we should talk about adjusting your schedule." Emma finally looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Beth said carefully, "that maybe it's time you prioritize this coding thing. We can work around the conference, give you fewer shifts." The offer was tempting, but Emma hesitated. "I need the money. And MIT isn't paying you?" "They are, but it's temporary, consulting only." Beth shrugged. "Then consult more places, or ask for a permanent position. You're clearly good at this, Emma. Maybe better than you are at waiting tables." She smiled to soften the words. "No offense." "None taken," Emma replied, already turning the idea over in her mind. A permanent position. It seemed impossible, and yet... The following weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Emma split her time between coding, rehearsing her presentation, and reduced shifts at the diner. She practiced in front of mirrors, in front of her roommates, even in front of regular customers who had no idea what she was talking about, but applauded politely anyway. 2 days before the conference, disaster struck. Emma arrived at the lab to find the team in crisis mode. They'd attempted to scale the algorithm to handle the massive data sets they'd be demonstrating, and the system had crashed spectacularly. "What happened?" Emma asked, dropping her bag and rushing to Alicia's. "Workstation. Memory leak," Alicia explained grimly. "Somewhere in the parallel processing module, when we hit about 50,000 concurrent operations, everything goes sideways." James was already pulling up the code. "We need to find it fast. The demo is the centerpiece of our presentation." Emma joined them, scanning through the thousands of lines of code. For hours, the team worked in tense silence, each taking sections to debug. Lunch came and went. Afternoon faded into evening. Still, the error eluded them. At 10 p.m., with most of the team bleary-eyed and frustrated, Emma had a sudden thought. "Wait," she said, straightening in her chair. "It's not in the parallelization module. It's in how we're handling the memory allocation before the parallel operations even begin." She pulled up a section of code she'd written weeks earlier, the foundation upon which everything else was built. "Here," she pointed. "We're pre-allocating based on the initial dataset size, but we're not accounting for how the data expands during processing." James leaned in, frowning. "That doesn't make sense. The memory allocation should adapt automatically. Not if we're explicitly telling it not to," Emma countered, highlighting a line of code. "See, this constraint was necessary for small data sets, but now it's becoming a bottleneck." Dr. Chen, who had been watching silently, suddenly laughed. "She's right. Again." He clapped Emma on the shoulder. "Fix it, Torres." Emma worked through the night, rewriting the memory handling module while maintaining the efficiency of her original algorithm. By dawn, she had a solution. They ran the tests, 10,000 operations, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. The system held steady. "It's beautiful," Alicia murmured, watching the visualization of data flowing through Emma's algorithm, splitting into parallel streams and rejoining seamlessly. Dr. Chen looked at Emma with undisguised pride. "You've saved our presentation and probably the entire project." Emma, running on nothing but coffee and determination, managed a tired smile. "That's what happens when you learn to code between taking orders and bussing tables. You get good at fixing things on the fly." The day of the conference arrived. The venue was a grand hotel in downtown Boston, its conference center filled with the world's leading computer scientists and engineers. Emma stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. She wore a borrowed blazer over a simple blouse, her hair pulled back neatly. "You don't look like a waitress," she told her reflection, "but you don't look like a MIT researcher either." There was a knock at the door. "Emma?" Dr. Chen called. "We're up in 10 minutes. "Coming," she replied, taking a deep breath. Who was she trying to fool? Everyone would see through her the moment she opened her mouth. But as Emma stepped out into the hallway, she found the entire team waiting. Alicia gave her a thumbs up. James offered a rare smile. Dr. Chen handed her a USB drive. "The final demo," he said. "Your code, your presentation." Emma took the drive, her hand steady despite her nerves. "Our code," she corrected. "Our presentation." They walked together to the presentation hall, where hundreds of attendees had gathered. As Dr. Chen took the stage to introduce their work, Emma waited in the wings, running through her talking points one last time. Then she heard her name. Doom. And now I'm pleased to introduce Emma Torres, the brilliant mind behind the algorithm you're about to see. Emma walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the audience a sea of indistinct faces. She connected the USB drive to the presentation computer, and her code appeared on the massive screen behind her. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice surprisingly calm. "What you're looking at is a new approach to parallelizing computational processes in AI systems." As she spoke, Emma forgot her fears, forgot the borrowed blazer and her lack of degrees. She simply shared what she knew, what she had created. The audience leaned forward in their seats, engaged by her clear explanations and the elegance of her solution. When the demonstration ran, showing the algorithm processing complex operations at unprecedented speeds, a murmur of appreciation ran through the crowd. During the Q&A session that followed, Emma fielded complex technical questions. With growing confidence, her hands no longer shaking as she pointed to specific sections of her code. As she walked off stage to enthusiastic applause, Emma felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. This world of algorithms and innovation. Perhaps it could be hers after all. At the reception afterward, Emma found herself surrounded by researchers and industry professionals, all eager to discuss her work. Business cards were pressed into her hands. Questions about her background were met with impressed nods rather than skepticism when she mentioned the diner. "MIT is lucky to have found you," one woman commented. She introduced herself as the CTO of a major tech company. "We're always looking for unconventional thinkers like yourself." Emma smiled politely, but felt a pang of uncertainty. "I'm just a consultant on this project," she clarified, "not actually part of MIT." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Then MIT is even luckier than I thought, and perhaps not smart enough to keep you." Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Emma found a quiet corner to collect her thoughts. The day had been overwhelming. The presentation, the positive reception, the business cards now filling her pockets. It felt like standing on the edge of a new life, one she hadn't dared imagine. Dr. Chen found her there, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered one to Emma. "To the most successful presentation of the conference," he toasted. Emma clinked her glass against his. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." "I didn't take a chance," Dr. Chen corrected. "I recognized talent. There's a difference." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "The department chair was here today. He was impressed." Emma nodded, uncertain where this was. "Leading?" "He's authorized me to offer you a position," Dr. Chen continued. "Not as a consultant, but as a full research associate in our lab. With benefits, tuition credits if you want them, and the opportunity to publish under your own name." Emma's glass froze halfway to her lips. "A real position at MIT?" "A real position," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Your algorithm isn't just a clever solution, Emma. It has potential applications across our entire AI infrastructure. We need you to continue developing it." "But I don't have a degree," Emma protested weakly. "How can I be a research associate without even a bachelor's?" Dr. Chen shrugged. "Exceptions are made for exceptional people, and you, Emma Torres, are definitely exceptional." Emma stared into her champagne, watching the bubbles rise and burst. 6 weeks ago, she had been just another waitress working the night shift. Her coding skills, a private hobby with no outlet. Now she was being offered a position at one of the world's premier research institutions. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Dr. Chen nodded, unsurprised. "Of course, take the weekend, but know that this isn't charity or a fluke. You've earned this." As Emma left the hotel that night, the Boston skyline glittered against the dark sky. She pulled out her phone and called Beth at the diner. "How'd it go?" Beth answered immediately. "They offered me a job," Emma said, still hardly believing the words. "A real position at MIT." Beth's cheer was so loud, Emma had to hold the phone away from her ear. "I knew it. Did you accept?" Not yet. I told them I needed to think about it. Think about what? This is what you've been working toward. Emma paused at a crosswalk, watching the pedestrian signal change. I know, it's just, this has all happened so fast. 3 months ago, I was just the night shift waitress. Now they want me developing algorithms for MIT's AI systems. Because you're brilliant, Beth said matter-of-factly. Anyone who's seen you balancing 8 orders while calculating the night's receipts in your head could have told you that. Emma laughed. It's not the same thing. No, Beth agreed. Coding is probably easier. After hanging up, Emma didn't head home. Instead, she found herself walking toward the diner. It was nearly midnight, the middle of the shift she would normally be working. Through the windows, she could see Lily and the new hire, Miguel, moving between tables. The familiar scene gave her a strange sense of nostalgia, as if she were already looking back on a former life. The bell jingled as she pushed open the door. Lily spotted her and raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you supposed to be celebrating with the big brains?" she asked, balancing a tray of dishes. "I wanted to come home first," Emma replied, surprising herself with the choice of words. This place had been home in its way, a safe harbor when nothing else was certain. Emma made her way to her usual break spot behind the building. The night was cool, the narrow alley quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic. She pulled out her laptop, the same second-hand machine she'd used to teach herself coding, and opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "Reasons to accept. The MIT position." Then below it, "Reasons not to." But as she stared at the blank lists, Emma realized the decision had already been made. There was only one path forward. The next morning, Emma called Dr. Chen. "I'll take the position," she said without preamble. "Excellent," Dr. Chen replied, his relief evident. "When can you start?" Emma thought of the diner, of the 2 weeks. Notice she owed Beth, of the small apartment she shared with 3 other waitresses, all the trappings of her old life. 2 weeks, she said firmly. "I need to properly leave my current job." "Of course," Dr. Chen agreed. "We'll have everything ready for you." "And Emma, yes? Welcome to MIT." The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Emma trained Miguel to take over her shifts, packed her few belongings, and said goodbye to the regulars who had come to rely on her remembering their usual orders. On her last night, Beth presented her with a cake decorated with binary code in icing, Row 1 Sao Zhou 1, which Emma recognized as the ASCII code for an exclamation point. "The cook's brother is a programmer," Beth explained with a shrug. "This was as close to coding as we could get on a cake." Emma laughed, touched by the gesture. "It's perfect." As Emma cleaned her station for the final time, wiping down counters that had been her workspace for 3 years, Lily approached. "So," Lily said, leaning against the counter, "MIT research associate. Not bad for the girl who couldn't afford community college." "I still can't believe it sometimes," Emma admitted. "I can," Lily replied simply. "You were always too smart for this place. We were just keeping you until somewhere better figured it out." Emma's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. When her shift ended at 6 a.m., Emma hung up her apron. For the last time, the sun was just rising as she stepped out onto the street, casting long shadows across the pavement. She took one last look at the diner, its neon sign still glowing against the early morning light. Then she turned and walked toward her future, where lines of code would replace order slips, and her midnight inspirations would power systems that changed the world. Emma's first day as an official MIT research associate began with a minor identity crisis. Standing in front of her closet in her new studio apartment, the first place she'd ever lived alone, she stared at the meager selection of clothes. After years of uniforms and practical attire for waitressing, she owned nothing that seemed appropriate for a prestigious research institution. She settled on black pants and a navy button-down, the same outfit she'd worn to her first meeting. At the lab, professional enough, she hoped, but not trying too hard. The real challenge wasn't clothing. It was the crushing weight of expectation that had settled on her shoulders overnight. The MIT campus buzzed with activity as Emma made her way to the Computational Efficiency Research Lab. Students streamed between buildings, backpacks laden with textbooks and laptops. Professors strode purposefully along tree-lined paths. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged. Emma clutched her new ID badge like a talisman. Dr. Chen was waiting when she arrived, his enthusiasm palpable. "Perfect timing," he announced. "The teams assembled for the kickoff meeting." Emma followed him into a conference room where the familiar faces of her former colleagues, now teammates, greeted her with varying degrees of warmth. Alicia offered a genuine smile. James gave a respectful nod. 3 new researchers Emma hadn't met before eyed her with undisguised curiosity. "Everyone," Dr. Chen began, "as you know, Emma Torres is joining our team permanently. Her parallel processing algorithm has secured us additional funding from the Institute's AI initiative." He gestured to a whiteboard covered in diagrams and timelines. "Phase 2 begins today. We're scaling the algorithm to handle the neural network processing for the autonomous learning module in the Sierra project." Emma's pulse quickened. Sierra, the Cognitive Enhancement and Recognition Architecture, was MIT's most ambitious AI system, designed to teach itself new skills through observation alone. It was cutting-edge work that made headlines in tech journals. "Emma," Dr. Chen continued, "your algorithm will become the processing backbone of the entire system. We need you to adapt it to work with spatial temporal data flows while maintaining the efficiency gains we've demonstrated." The magnitude of the task momentarily stole Emma's breath. This wasn't tweaking code in a diner's back alley anymore. This was building critical infrastructure for one of the world's most advanced AI systems. "Questions?" Dr. Chen looked around. The room, a young woman Emma didn't recognize, raised her hand. "Timeline? 4 months to integration testing," Dr. Chen answered, "which means functional code in 3. James whistled softly. "That's aggressive." "That's why we have Emma," Dr. Chen replied confidently. All eyes turned to her. Emma straightened. In her chair, "I'll need to understand the full architecture of Sierra first," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "and access to all the performance metrics from the current processing system." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "Olivia will get you everything you need." He gestured to the young woman who had asked about timelines. "She's our liaison with the Sierra core team." The meeting disbanded, and Emma found herself at her new workstation, a proper desk with dual monitors and the latest hardware, a stark contrast to her second-hand laptop. A small plant sat beside the keyboard with a note. "Welcome aboard, Alicia's handwriting." Olivia appeared at Emma's desk moments later, tablet in hand. "I've shared the Sierra documentation with you," she said briskly. "It's about 1,200 pages. The performance metrics are in a separate folder. That's another few hundred." Emma blinked. "All right, I'll start reviewing today." Olivia hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Just so you know, the core team was skeptical about bringing in someone." She paused, searching for a diplomatic phrase. "Someone without formal credentials," Emma finished for her. "Yes," Olivia admitted, but Dr. Chen was adamant. He showed them the conference presentation recording. A hint of respect crept into her tone. "3 of our senior architects changed their votes after seeing your demo." Emma wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or pressured. "I won't let them down," she said simply. "Good," Olivia replied, all business again. "Because Sierra is going to change everything, and we can't afford bottlenecks. Left alone, Emma opened the Sierra documentation. The system's architecture was breathtaking in its complexity. Layers upon layers of neural networks, reinforcement learning modules, and memory management systems. At the center of it all was the processing engine her algorithm would replace, the brain of the brain, so to speak. Hours slipped by as Emma lost herself in the technical details. She barely noticed when the lab emptied for lunch or when it filled again afterward. It was only when Alicia tapped her shoulder that Emma surfaced from her deep dive. "Earth to Torres," Alicia said, amused. "It's past 7, first day's over." Emma blinked, disoriented. "Already? You've been in the zone for hours. Find anything interesting in there?" Alicia nodded at the documentation. "Their current processing architecture is..." Emma paused, suddenly aware of potential politics. This was someone's work she was evaluating, someone's design she was replacing. "A clunky mess?" Alicia suggested. Emma smiled cautiously. "I was going to say conventionally structured," Alicia laughed. "Diplomatic. Good call." She perched on the edge of Emma's desk. "The original architect left 2 years ago for Google. Nobody will be offended if you tear it down." "That's reassuring," Emma replied, gathering her things. "There's a lot to rebuild." "That's why they hired you," Alicia said. "Some of us have been saying for months that Sierra needs a fresh approach to parallelization. The old architecture is hitting physical limits." As they walked out together, Alicia added casually, "A few of us are grabbing dinner. Want to join?" The invitation caught Emma off guard. Social interactions with colleagues, another aspect of professional life she had no experience navigating. At the diner, relationships with co-workers had been straightforward, forged in the trenches of busy shifts and shared tips. "Sure," Emma said, trying to sound nonchalant. "That would be nice." The few turned out to be Alicia, James, and 2 junior researchers named Deepak and Sarah. They settled into a nearby pub, the conversation flowing easily between topics. Recent papers, department gossip, weekend plans. Emma mostly listened, nursing a beer and absorbing the unfamiliar dynamic. "So, Emma," Deepak asked during a lull, "how did you learn to code? Self-taught completely?" Emma nodded. "Mostly online resources. Free courses, open source projects. I'd practice during breaks at the diner." "That's impressive," Sarah remarked. "Most self-taught programmers I know got stuck at intermediate level. Your algorithm is graduate level work." "It wasn't a straight path," Emma admitted. "I've been coding since I was 15. My high school math teacher gave me an old programming book when he noticed I was finishing calculus problems too quickly." "Icky. Why didn't you pursue it formally?" James asked, his usual reserve softened by curiosity and perhaps a beer. The question hung in the air. Emma took a sip of her drink, considering how much to share. These weren't just random colleagues anymore. They were her team. "My mom got sick my senior year," she said finally. "Cancer. Medical bills wiped out the college fund, such as it was. I started waitressing to help with expenses, and then..." She shrugged. "Life happened. 1 year turned into 3, then 5. "But you kept coding," Alicia observed. "It was my escape," Emma said simply. "Problems I could actually solve when everything else felt impossible." A moment of silent understanding passed around the table. Then Sarah raised her glass. "To solving the impossible," she toasted. Later that night, in her sparse new apartment, Emma sat cross-legged on her bed with her laptop balanced on her knees, a habit from years of coding in cramped quarters. The Sierra documentation was spread around her in printed chunks, pages already, marked with sticky notes and annotations. She opened a new document and began outlining her approach. The conventional wisdom was to adapt existing architectures incrementally, preserving backward compatibility and minimizing disruption. But as Emma sketched possibilities, she saw an opportunity for something bolder. The current Sierra processing engine was built on assumptions about hardware limitations that no longer applied. What if she reimagined it completely? Her algorithm could do more than just speed up the existing processes. It could transform how Sierra handled information at a fundamental level. Emma typed furiously, ideas flowing faster than her fingers could capture them. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a puzzle worthy of her full attention, a challenge that made every late night at the diner worth it. By 3 a.m., her old prime working hours, Emma had drafted a proposal that would raise eyebrows. She saved the file, closed her laptop, and finally allowed herself to sleep. The next morning, Emma presented her ideas to Dr. Chen in his office. He listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions as she explained her vision for a completely redesigned processing architecture. "You're proposing a ground-up rebuild," he said when she finished. "That's ambitious, given our timeline." "It's the only way to achieve the performance gains we need," Emma countered. "Grafting my algorithm onto the existing architecture would be like putting a jet engine on a horse-drawn carriage." Dr. Chen's lips twitched with amusement at the analogy. "The Sierra team will have concerns about stability, testing requirements, integration challenges, all valid," Emma acknowledged. "But the current architecture is already struggling with basic pattern recognition tasks. When we move to dynamic learning scenarios, it will collapse completely." Dr. Chen studied her for a moment, then nodded decisively. "Draft a formal proposal. Be explicit about the risks and mitigation strategies. I'll get you on the agenda for next week's Sierra leadership meeting." Emma spent the following days refining her proposal, running simulations and preparing for potential objections. Olivia proved unexpectedly helpful, providing insight into the Sierra team's priorities and concerns. "They're worried about their timeline slipping," Olivia explained during a working lunch. "Sierra has already had 2 major delays. Another would jeopardize funding." "What if we could demonstrate immediate gains?" Emma mused. "Not waiting for the full rebuild, but showing progress in stages." "That might work," Olivia conceded. "They respond to results, not promises." The Sierra leadership meeting was held in a sleek conference room in the main AI building. Emma arrived early, setting up her laptop with uncharacteristic nervousness. This wasn't just a presentation to academics. Several industry partners and institutional funders would be attending virtually. Dr. Chen joined her, reviewing her slides one last time. "Remember," he advised, "they don't need to understand every technical detail. Focus on outcomes, risks, and how we'll manage the transition." Emma nodded, grateful for his guidance. The room filled gradually with serious-faced researchers and administrators. Some greeted Dr. Chen warmly, others simply nodded in acknowledgement. Emma received curious glances, but few direct greetings. She was still an unknown quantity to most. Dr. Lloyd Harrington, the Sierra project director, called the meeting to order. A distinguished computer scientist with a reputation for brilliance and impatience in equal measure, he dominated the room with his presence alone. "We have a proposal from the computational efficiency team," he announced without preamble. "Dr. Chen and Ms. Torres will present an alternative processing architecture for Sierra." He gestured for them to begin, his expression neutral but assessing. Dr. Chen introduced Emma briefly, highlighting her role in developing the parallelization algorithm that had attracted attention at the international conference. Then he stepped aside, giving Emma the floor. "Sierra's current processing architecture was designed 5 years ago," Emma began, her voice steadier than she expected. "It was built for sequential task processing in controlled environments. But Sierra's mission has evolved." She advanced to a slide showing performance metrics. "These are last month's benchmarks for complex pattern recognition tasks. Response times increase exponentially with dataset size, because the architecture can't effectively parallelize contextual understanding. A murmur ran through the room. This was a known pain point. My team has developed a new approach, Emma continued, consciously using my team rather than I, as Dr. Chen had suggested. Instead of grafting parallelization onto the existing structure, we propose rebuilding the processing core around distributive cognitive modeling. For the next 15 minutes, Emma walked through her proposal, showing simulations, highlighting risk factors, and outlining a staged implementation plan that would deliver incremental improvements while the full architecture was developed. When she finished, Dr. Harrington leaned forward. "Ambitious," he remarked, echoing Dr. Chen's initial response. "Perhaps too ambitious. You're essentially proposing to rebuild Sarah's brain while it's still thinking." "Not exactly," Emma countered. "Respectfully, we're proposing to build a new brain alongside the old one, gradually transferring functions as each module is verified, with the ability to roll back if issues arise." A woman in the back spoke up. "The simulation results are impressive, but simulations often fail to capture real-world complexity. What assurances do we have that these gains will translate to actual performance?" It was a fair question, and one Emma had anticipated. "We've replicated Sarah's exact operational conditions in our test environment," she explained. "But more importantly, we're proposing a phased approach with explicit verification gateways. If the real-world gains don't match our projections at any point, we can pause or pivot." Questions continued for nearly an hour, probing every aspect of Emma's proposal. Some were skeptical, others genuinely curious. Through it all, Emma maintained her composure, drawing on technical knowledge accumulated through years of solitary study and practical problem-solving. Finally, Dr. Harrington called for a decision. "This requires careful consideration. The potential benefits are substantial, but so are the risks. We'll convene a technical review committee to evaluate the proposal in detail." He looked directly at Emma. "Ms. Torres, you'll need to present a more detailed architectural blueprint for that review." "How soon?" Emma asked. 2 weeks, Dr. Harrington replied. "Assuming the committee approves, you would begin implementation immediately thereafter." After the meeting, Dr. Chen debriefed with Emma in his office. "That went well," he said, pouring coffee for both of them. Harrington didn't dismiss it outright, which is practically a standing ovation from him. 2 weeks isn't much time for a complete blueprint," Emma noted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "No, it's not," Dr. Chen agreed. "But it's a good sign. He's taking it seriously." He studied Emma over his cup. "You handled yourself remarkably well in there. Many PhDs would have crumbled under that level of scrutiny." Emma shrugged. "After dealing with drunk customers who insist their burger is wrong at 2 a.m., academic questions don't seem so intimidating." Dr. Chen laughed. "Fair point. Still, I'm impressed." His expression turned serious. "The next 2 weeks will be intense. The blueprint needs to be airtight. Every component, every interface, every potential failure mode documented." "I'll start tonight," Emma said, "and I'll need input from everyone on the team." The following days blurred together as Emma immersed herself in developing the architectural blueprint. She practically lived in the lab, sometimes working through the night when inspiration struck. It reminded her of her waitressing days, the same odd hours, the same intense focus, but with a purpose that energized rather than drained her. The team rallied around the effort. Alicia took over testing protocols, James handled computational resource planning, and the others contributed specialized expertise. Even Olivia became a regular fixture in their lab, serving as a bridge to the wider Sierra team. One evening, as Emma and James worked late refining the memory management subsystem, he asked a question that caught her off guard. "Do you ever regret all those years at the diner?" Emma's hands paused over her keyboard. What do you mean? You could have been doing this kind of work years ago, James elaborated, if circumstances had been different. It was a question Emma had asked herself many times, especially in her first weeks at MIT. All those years serving food, cleaning tables, counting tips, while her mind was capable of so much more. Sometimes, she admitted, but then I wouldn't be the same programmer. I might have learned more traditional approaches, followed established patterns, and missed creating your algorithm, James concluded. Exactly. Emma resumed typing. Besides, I learned things at the diner that helped me here. Efficiency under pressure, adapting quickly, reading people. James nodded thoughtfully, the road less traveled. Something like that, Emma agreed. The night before the technical review committee meeting, Emma found herself alone in the lab, making final adjustments to the presentation. The blueprint was complete. Hundreds of pages of detailed specifications, interface definitions, test, protocols, and migration plans. It represented the most comprehensive work of her life. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. Still at it? Emma nodded, rubbing tired eyes, just double-checking everything. He sat in a chair beside her desk. "I've been thinking about your journey," he said. "From the diner to here." "It's been surreal," Emma admitted. "It's been instructive," Dr. Chen countered. "For all of us. Academic institutions like MIT pride themselves on recognizing excellence, but we have blind spots, rigid pathways, fixed notions of how knowledge should be acquired and validated." He gestured at the blueprint displayed on her screen. "This work, and your algorithm before it, challenges those notions. It asks us to reconsider what we might be missing by focusing so narrowly on traditional credentials." Emma wasn't sure how to respond. She'd been so focused on proving herself worthy of her position that she hadn't considered the broader implications of her presence at MIT. "Tomorrow," Dr. Chen continued, "you'll face people who have spent their entire lives within the academic system. Some will be resistant simply because your existence challenges their assumptions." He smiled slightly. "Don't let it throw you. The blueprint speaks for itself." The technical review committee convened in a small, windowless room that somehow managed to feel both sterile and intimidating. 7 experts from various disciplines sat around a U-shaped table, with Emma at the open end. Dr. Chen was not permitted to attend. This was Emma's proposal to defend alone. Dr. Harrington introduced the committee members, specialists in neural networks, distributed systems, memory architecture, AI safety, and more. Each had reviewed the blueprint in advance and came armed with specific questions. For 4 grueling hours, Emma explained, clarified, defended, and occasionally conceded points. She drew diagrams on whiteboards, walked through code sections, and presented alternative approaches for particularly contentious elements. The neural network specialist, Dr. Abigail Chen, no relation to Marcus, was especially challenging, pressing Emma on how her architecture would handle emergent behaviors in Sierra's learning modules. "The beauty of distributed cognitive processing," Emma explained, drawing a complex diagram of interconnected nodes, "is that it doesn't impose rigid pathways for information flow. When emergent behaviors appear, the system adapts naturally, allocating resources based on processing demands rather than predefined patterns." Dr. Abigail Chen studied the diagrams skeptically. "This approach lacks the guardrails of conventional architectures. How do you prevent runaway processes?" Emma pointed to a subsystem she'd designed specifically for this concern. "The oversight module monitors resource allocation patterns and can intervene if any process exceeds predetermined safety thresholds. It's similar to how our own brains regulate cognitive processes, flexible but bounded." The specialist raised an eyebrow, seemingly impressed despite herself. An interesting analogy. I'm not entirely convinced, but it's a thoughtful approach to the problem. As the session wound down, Dr. Harrington asked the final question. If approved, how quickly could you deliver the first functional module? 6 weeks for the first phase, Emma answered confidently. It would handle basic pattern recognition tasks, demonstrating a minimum 30% improvement in processing efficiency. Dr. Harrington nodded. Thank you, Ms. Torres. The committee will deliberate and provide its recommendation by end of day. Emma left the room exhausted, but cautiously optimistic. She had answered every question thoroughly, acknowledged legitimate concerns, and stood firm on her core design choices. Now, all she could do was wait. She returned to the lab to find the team pretending to work while obviously awaiting news. Alicia didn't even maintain the pretense, perching on a desk with a coffee cup. Well? She demanded as soon as Emma entered. They're deliberating, Emma replied, collapsing into her chair. Decision by end of day. How did it go? James asked, rolling his chair over. Emma considered the question. It was intense, but fair. They asked good questions, raised valid concerns. Did anyone give you a particularly hard time? Alicia inquired, always attuned to lab politics. Dr. Abigail Chen was challenging, Emma admitted, but not unreasonably so. James winced. She's notorious for tearing apart proposals. If you held your own with her, that's a good sign. The team tried to return to normal work, but concentration was impossible. Every email notification caused heads to snap up. Every phone ring sent a jolt through the room. At 5:47 p.m., when most had given up hope of hearing that day, Dr. Marcus Chen burst into the lab, his face unreadable. Well, Alicia demanded again, speaking for everyone. Dr. Chen's serious expression held for a moment longer, then broke into a broad smile. Approved, with commendations for innovative design and thorough risk mitigation planning. The room erupted in cheers. Someone popped a bottle of champagne that had been hidden in a desk drawer. For either outcome, they claimed. As plastic cups were distributed, Dr. Chen found Emma. Harrington called me personally, he said, his voice pitched for her ears only. Said it was one of the most impressive defenses he's seen from someone at any level. He specifically mentioned your handling of Abigail Chen's questions. Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a burden of doubt she'd carried for so long she'd almost forgotten it was there. So we're really doing this? Rebuilding Sierra's brain from scratch? We really are, Dr. Chen confirmed, handing her a cup of champagne. And you're leading the effort. The celebration continued into the evening, eventually migrating to a nearby restaurant. As her teammates laughed and planned and speculated about the work ahead, Emma found herself momentarily apart, observing the scene with a sense of wonder. 6 months ago, she'd been serving late-night pancakes, stealing moments to code on a battered laptop. Now she was leading a transformative project at one of the world's premier research institutions, surrounded by colleagues who respected her abilities. The contrast was so stark, it almost seemed like someone else's life. Alicia slid into the seat beside her. You've gone quiet. Having second thoughts? Emma shook her head. Just taking it all in. Sometimes I still feel like I'm going to wake up and be back at the diner. Well, don't disappear on us, Alicia said, bumping Emma's shoulder with her own. Sierra needs that brilliant brain of yours. She paused, then added more seriously, and so do we. You've changed things around here, you know, in good ways. Before Emma could respond, James called for attention, raising his glass in a toast. To Emma Torres and the future of Sierra, he declared. May your code run bug-free and your coffee always be hot. As glasses clinked and the team cheered, Emma felt something shift within her, the last piece of doubt giving way to a quiet certainty. This was real. This was her life now, and she was ready for whatever came next. The implementation phase began the following Monday with a joint meeting of the computational efficiency team and core Sierra engineers. Emma, now officially the lead architect for the processing redesign, outlined the development schedule and team assignments. Phase 1 focuses on the pattern recognition subsystem, she explained, pointing to a projected timeline. It's relatively self-contained, which makes it ideal for validating our approach before we tackle more integrated components. The Sierra engineers listened, with expressions ranging from excitement to skepticism. One young man raised his hand. "These performance projections seem optimistic. What happens if we don't hit the 30% improvement target?" "We've built in assessment. Checkpoints every 2 weeks," Emma replied. "If we're tracking below projections, we'll analyze why and adapt accordingly." She smiled slightly. "But I'm confident we'll exceed the target, not miss it." As the meeting concluded, Dr. Harrington approached Emma. "Confidence is good," he said quietly. "Delivery is better. I'll be watching this closely, Ms. Torres." "I would expect nothing less," Emma responded, meeting his gaze steadily. The weeks that followed tested Emma in ways waitressing never had. Leading a technical team required skills beyond coding: communication, conflict resolution, prioritization, delegation. She made mistakes, corrected course, and gradually found her rhythm. Some challenges were unexpected. A senior Sierra engineer consistently questioned her decisions in meetings, undermining her authority. After 2 weeks of this, Emma invited him to coffee. "I value your experience," she told him frankly, "but the public challenges are creating confusion for the team. If you have concerns, I'd appreciate discussing them privately first." The engineer studied her, clearly surprised by the direct approach. "Fair enough," he conceded. "For what it's worth, it's not personal. I question every new architecture until it proves itself. Then I look forward to proving this one to you," Emma replied. Other challenges were more technical. The interface between their new pattern recognition module and Sierra's existing memory system proved especially troublesome, requiring 3 complete redesigns before they found a solution that worked. "It's like trying to teach a horse to talk to a dolphin," James complained during a late-night debugging session. 2 completely different paradigms. "Then we need a translator," Emma decided, sketching a new component on the whiteboard. "Something that can speak both languages." The idea evolved into an elegant adapter layer that became a template for future integration challenges. This pattern repeated throughout the development process. Obstacles encountered, frustrations vented, solutions discovered, usually in the small hours of the morning when conventional thinking gave way to creative approaches. 5 weeks into the 6-week timeline for Phase 1, Emma called the team together for a critical test. They would process a standardized image recognition dataset that had been established as a benchmark for Sierra's capabilities. "Current Sierra completes this test in approximately 47 minutes, Emma reminded everyone. "Our target is 33 minutes or less." The team gathered around a large monitor displaying a progress bar and performance metrics. Emma initiated the test, and the room fell silent except for the quiet hum of computers. Numbers flashed on the screen as the system processed thousands of images, identifying patterns, classifying objects, and generating metadata. The timer counted up. 10 minutes, 15, 20. At 28 minutes and 17 seconds, the progress bar completed and the system displayed its results. The accuracy matched Sierra's existing module, but the processing time represented a 40% improvement, exceeding their target by a significant margin. A moment of stunned silence was followed by erupting cheers. Emma found herself engulfed in a group hug, with even James participating despite his usual reserve. When the celebration subsided, Emma addressed the team. "This is just the beginning," she reminded them. "Phase 1 proves the approach works, but the real challenges are still ahead. Phase 2 tackles the learning module, the heart of what makes Sierra special." But today's victory deserved acknowledgement. Emma had learned enough about leadership to know that celebrating milestones was as important as planning for challenges. "Tonight, we celebrate," she declared. "Tomorrow, we start building Sierra's true potential." Word of the successful test spread quickly through MIT's AI community. Dr. Harrington himself visited the lab the following day, reviewing the results with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. "Impressive," he acknowledged. "The accuracy metrics are particularly noteworthy. Same results in less time without sacrificing quality." "That was a non-negotiable requirement," Emma explained. "Speed without accuracy is just faster failure." Dr. Harrington almost smiled. "Indeed. The Oversight Committee is meeting next week. They'll want an update on the full project timeline based on these results." As he turned to leave, he added, "Good work, Ms. Torres. You've silenced many doubters with this demonstration." When he was gone, Dr. Chen approached Emma. "That's high praise from Harrington," he observed. "He doesn't give it lightly." Emma shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "It's the team's achievement, not just mine." "Leadership matters," Dr. Chen countered. "This team has always been talented, but they needed someone who could see possibilities others missed." He studied her thoughtfully. "Have you considered pursuing a formal degree now that you're here? My MIT would likely offer substantial credit for your practical experience." The question caught Emma by surprise. She'd been so focused on proving herself in her current role that she hadn't thought beyond it. "I haven't really considered it," she admitted. "Think about it," Dr. Chen suggested. "Your future here is secure regardless, but a degree would open additional doors, teaching positions, department leadership, research grant opportunities." Emma promised to consider it, but her immediate focus remained on Phase 2, rebuilding Sierra's learning module to handle dynamic, unstructured information processing. This was where her architecture would truly prove its worth, enabling Sierra to learn from observation in ways the current system couldn't approach. As spring turned to summer, the project continued to advance, meeting or exceeding most milestones. Emma's team expanded, integrating more Sierra engineers as the new architecture demonstrated its potential. The adaptive, distributed approach Emma had envisioned was taking shape, breathing new life into MIT's flagship AI system. Autumn in Cambridge brought crimson leaves and a growing sense of anticipation throughout MIT's AI department. Phase 2 of the Sierra redesign was nearing completion, and preliminary tests showed results that exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Emma's distributed processing architecture had transformed Sierra from a promising but limited system into something that was beginning to exhibit truly adaptive learning behaviors. On a brisk October morning, Emma stood in the observation room adjacent to Sierra's main testing environment. Through a large window, she could see a robotic arm positioned in front of various objects on a table: blocks, tools, household items. The real breakthrough wasn't the arm itself, but what was controlling it. "Test sequence 47 initiating," announced Deepak, who had become Emma's right hand in implementation. Novel object introduction without prior categorical data. On the table, a research assistant placed an unusual object, a handcrafted wooden puzzle with moving parts that didn't fit neatly into standard object categories. Previous versions of Sierra would have struggled to process this anomaly, attempting to force it into existing classification schemes. Emma watched intently as the robotic arm approached the puzzle. Instead of grasping it immediately, the arm hovered, camera-focused, gathering visual data. Then it began a series of experimental interactions, touching one part, observing the result, trying another approach. "It's learning through exploration," Olivia murmured beside Emma, "just like a child would." Emma nodded, her expression a mixture of pride and wonder. The distributed processing allows it to form hypotheses and test them in parallel rather than following a single, predetermined analysis path. The robotic arm successfully manipulated the puzzle, discovering how its components fit together through trial and error. More importantly, when presented with similar but different puzzles in subsequent tests, Sarah applied its learned principles rather than starting from scratch. "Transfer learning is happening spontaneously," Deepak noted, excitement evident in his voice as he reviewed the data. "It's building a conceptual framework, not just storing patterns." Dr. Harrington, who had been observing silently from the back of the room, finally spoke. "How much hand-holding went into this demonstration? Specialized code for this particular test scenario?" "None," Emma replied confidently. "We haven't modified the core architecture since the last review. This is exactly what we designed it to do, learn adaptively from novel experiences." Dr. Harrington's expression remained neutral, but there was a new respect in his eyes. "The Oversight Committee meets next week. I want a full demonstration of adaptive learning across multiple domains, not just physical manipulation." "We'll be ready," Emma assured him. After Dr. Harrington left, Olivia turned to Emma. "He's impressed, he just doesn't want to admit it yet." Emma smiled. "He's right to be cautious. This is just the beginning of what Sarah needs to accomplish." Back in the main lab, Emma found Alicia and James hunched over a terminal, analyzing performance data from the latest tests. "The memory retrieval patterns are fascinating," Alicia reported as Emma joined them. "Look at these activation maps. Sarah is forming conceptual associations spontaneously, beyond the explicit information we've provided." James pointed to a particular cluster in the visualization. "It's almost like watching a neural network develop in real time, but with a level of structural self-organization we haven't seen before." Emma studied the data, noticing patterns that reminded her of ideas she'd explored during late nights. At the diner, it's creating a form of working memory that exists between the permanent storage and active processing layers, a buffer for concepts that are contextually relevant. "Exactly," James agreed. "Your architecture creates space for emergent structures that traditional designs would have prevented." He hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic emotion, "It's beautiful, Emma. I didn't fully understand your vision until seeing it in action like this." Coming from James, who had initially been her most skeptical colleague, the acknowledgement meant more than any formal recognition. The days before the Oversight Committee meeting passed in a blur of preparations, last-minute optimizations, and rehearsals. Emma insisted on testing Sarah across diverse learning scenarios: language acquisition, visual pattern recognition, logical problem-solving, to demonstrate the versatility of the new architecture. The night before the presentation, Emma found herself alone in the lab, reviewing every detail one final time. The quiet reminded her of the diner in those early morning hours when inspiration had first struck. So much had changed since then, yet something essential remained the same: the pure joy of solving complex puzzles, of creating systems that could think in new ways. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Chen entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might be here," he said, offering one to Emma. "Pre-presentation ritual?" Emma accepted the coffee gratefully. "Something like that. Just making sure everything's perfect." Dr. Chen settled into a chair beside her. "You know, when I first found you at that diner, I thought I'd discovered a talented amateur who might help us with a specific bottleneck. He shook his head, smiling. I had no idea you would end up reinventing Sierra's entire cognitive architecture. Neither did I, Emma admitted. I was just trying to solve the problem in front of me. That's the mark of a true innovator, Doctor, Chen observed, seeing beyond conventional boundaries. He hesitated, then reached into his bag and withdrew an envelope. This came today. I thought you should have it before tomorrow's meeting. Emma took the envelope curiously. The MIT logo was emblazoned in the corner, along with the insignia of the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. Inside was a formal letter. We are pleased to offer you admission to the Accelerated Doctoral Program, Emma read aloud, her voice faltering, with advanced standing based on evaluation of your professional contributions and demonstrated expertise. They're offering you a direct path to a PhD, Dr. Chen explained, though Emma understood perfectly. With credit for the work you've already done on Sierra, you'd still need to complete certain coursework and requirements, but on an expedited track. Emma stared at the letter, emotions conflicting. Part of her thrilled at the validation, a formal recognition of her abilities from one of the world's premier institutions. Another part wondered if accepting meant conceding that her unorthodox path had been somehow insufficient. This doesn't change anything about your current position, Dr. Chen added, seeming to sense her hesitation. You'll continue leading the Sierra architecture team regardless. This is just another door opening for your future. Emma carefully folded the letter back into its envelope. Thank you for bringing this. I'll think about it after tomorrow's presentation. Dr. Chen nodded. One step at a time. Get some rest tonight, Emma. Tomorrow you show the world what a so-called waitress can do. The Oversight Committee meeting was held in MIT's prestigious Stata Center in a chamber typically reserved for major institutional announcements. Emma arrived to find not just the committee members, but representatives from research partners, funding agencies, and even a few tech industry executives. Word has spread about Sierra's transformation, Dr. Harrington explained when Emma raised an eyebrow at the unexpected audience. These developments have implications beyond our original scope. The presentation began with Dr. Harrington providing context about Sierra's evolution and the goals of the redesign. He then introduced Emma with a formality that would have seemed impossible months ago. The architectural innovations you'll see today represent a fundamental advance in how AI systems process and learn from information, he told the assembly. Emma Torres, our lead architect, will walk you through the design principles and demonstrations. Emma took her place at the podium, the familiar nervousness of public speaking briefly flaring before settling into focused determination. She began not with technical specifications, but with a conceptual overview. Traditional AI architectures, she explained, impose structures that limit how information flows and connections form. They're like cities built on rigid grids, efficient for certain purposes but constraining natural growth patterns. She advanced to an animated visualization of her distributed architecture. Sierra's new cognitive engine works differently. It's designed to evolve organically, creating processing pathways based on experience rather than predetermined rules. More like a living neural network than a fixed computer architecture. For the next 30 minutes, Emma guided the audience through the technical underpinnings of the system, striking a balance between accessibility for non-specialists and sufficient depth for the engineers present. Then came the demonstrations. Sierra was put through a series of learning challenges, some prepared, others introduced on the spot at the committee's request. It analyzed complex datasets, recognized subtle patterns, and most impressively, transferred learning from one domain to another without explicit instruction. When the final demonstration concluded, Sierra successfully learning to translate between two languages it had never encountered before by inferring grammatical patterns, the room fell momentarily silent before erupting in applause. The question period that followed was rigorous, but no longer skeptical. Technical experts probed the architecture's limitations and scalability. Industry representatives inquired about potential applications beyond research. Government funders asked about broader implications for security and ethics. Emma fielded each question with growing confidence, no longer feeling like an outsider who had stumbled into this world. This was her domain now, not because of credentials or titles, but because she had built something that worked in ways others hadn't imagined possible. As the session concluded, Dr. Harrington addressed the assembly. Based on these results, the Oversight Committee is not only approving continued development, but recommending an expansion of the Sierra project's scope and funding. Ms. Torres's architecture represents a significant breakthrough in adaptive AI systems. The gathering transitioned to a reception in an adjacent atrium. Emma found herself surrounded by people eager to discuss her work, exchange ideas, or simply congratulate her. It was overwhelming but gratifying, a validation not just of her technical abilities, but of her right to occupy this space. Amidst the crowd, Emma spotted a familiar face that seemed out of place. Beth, her former manager from the diner, standing awkwardly near the entrance in her work clothes, clearly having come directly from a shift. Emma excused herself from a conversation with a Stanford professor and made her way to Beth. "You came," Emma said, genuinely surprised and touched. Beth smiled, a bit self-conscious. "Dr. Chen called the diner last week, invited me, said I should see what my former waitress had accomplished." She looked around at the prestigious gathering. "I had no idea it was this big, Emma. I'm so proud of you." Emma impulsively hugged her. "I wouldn't be here without you, Beth. You adjusted my schedule, encouraged me to pursue this." "I just moved some shifts around," Beth demurred. "You did all the real work." "Not just the schedule," Emma insisted. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Dr. Chen approached, offering Beth a glass of champagne. "I'm Marcus Chen," he introduced himself, "Emma's mentor, though at this point, I think I'm learning more from her than she is from me." "Beth Winters," she replied, accepting the glass. "Former boss, current cheerleader." Dr. Chen smiled warmly. "Perfect timing, Beth. We're about to make an announcement you'll want to hear." He guided them toward a small podium where Dr. Harrington was preparing to address the gathering. The room quieted as he tapped a microphone. "Today marks a significant milestone for Sierra and for MIT's approach to artificial intelligence," Dr. Harrington began. "The results we've witnessed represent not just technical achievement, but a reminder that innovation often comes from unexpected sources." His gaze found Emma in the crowd. The Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, in conjunction with the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, is establishing a new research initiative, the Adaptive Cognitive Systems Lab. This lab will expand on the breakthroughs demonstrated in Sierra and explore applications across domains. He paused, allowing the announcement to register. "I'm pleased to announce that Emma Torres has accepted the position of founding director for this new lab." Emma's eyes widened. This was the first she'd heard of this appointment. Beth squeezed her arm excitedly as applause filled the room. Dr. Harrington continued, "Additionally, in recognition of her contributions, MIT is naming the distributed processing architecture she developed Torres architecture. It will be documented and released as an open framework for research and development across the AI community." The second announcement hit Emma even harder than the first. having her name permanently attached to the architecture she'd created, becoming part of the technical lexicon, was beyond anything she had imagined possible. As the reception continued, Emma found a moment to pull Dr. Chen aside. "You didn't tell me about the lab directorship," she said, her tone a mixture of gratitude and mild accusation. Dr. Chen smiled apologetically. "Harrington swore me to secrecy. He wanted to see your genuine reaction." His expression grew more serious. "You deserve this, Emma. The lab will give you resources and autonomy to take this work wherever you believe it should go next." "And the naming?" Emma asked, still processing that development. "That was actually James's suggestion," Dr. Chen revealed. "He argued that the architecture was distinctive enough to warrant its own designation, and that it should carry your name to ensure proper attribution in the literature." Emma glanced across the room to where James was deep in conversation with industry representatives, gesturing animatedly as he explained some technical aspect of the system. He had come so far from the skeptical colleague who had once dismissed her as a fluke. The following morning, Emma arrived at the lab early to find a small celebration already in progress. The team had brought coffee, pastries, and a hastily made banner reading, "Congratulations, Director Torres." Alicia handed her a coffee and a newspaper, the Boston Globe's technology section. The headline read, "MIT's AI Breakthrough, led by former Waitress." Below was a photo of Emma beside a visualization of the Torres architecture. "Page 1, above the fold," Alicia noted. "You're famous, Torres." Emma skimmed the article, which detailed her unusual journey from the diner to MIT, emphasizing the unconventional thinking that had led to the breakthrough. It was largely accurate, if somewhat dramatized for public consumption. "Don't let it go to your head," James called from across the room, but his smile belied the warning. "We still have Phase 3 to complete." Emma laughed, grateful for the return to normalcy. "No time for celebrity status," she agreed. "We have work to do." The weeks that followed brought a whirlwind of changes. Space was allocated for the new Adaptive Cognitive Systems Lab. Recruitment began for additional researchers. Emma found herself dividing time between completing Sierra's transformation and establishing the framework for the lab's broader research agenda. Amidst it all, she made one personal decision. She accepted admission to the accelerated doctoral program, not because she needed the credential to validate her work, but because she wanted the structured opportunity to deepen her theoretical understanding alongside her practical innovations. "The self-taught approach has served me well," she explained to Dr. Chen when informing him of her decision. "But I want to fill in the gaps, connect my intuitive understanding to formal foundations." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. The best researchers never stop being students. 6 months after the Oversight Committee meeting, the Adaptive Cognitive Systems Lab was formally inaugurated with a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by MIT leadership and industry partners. The space was bright and open, designed to facilitate collaboration across disciplines. Emma, now officially Director Torres and a doctoral candidate, stood before the gathered crowd. She had come a long way from the nervous waitress who had once hesitantly approached a mathematician's table. "The Torres architecture began with a simple observation," she told the assembly. "Our computational systems too often reflect how we think machines should work rather than how our own minds actually process information. Adaptive, intuitive, context-sensitive." She gestured to the lab behind her. "In this space, we'll continue pushing those boundaries, developing AI systems that learn not by brute force computation, but through the kind of emergent understanding that characterizes human cognition." After the ceremony, as guests toured the new facilities, Emma found a moment of quiet in her office. On the wall hung a framed article, Not the Boston Globe piece, but a smaller feature from a local Cambridge newspaper published a week after the major announcements. It focused not on the technical achievement, but on the human story, from Midnight Diner to MIT, a journey of perseverance. The article included an interview with Beth, who had said, "Emma always saw patterns others missed, whether it was in computer code or in knowing exactly when the dinner rush would hit. Some people are just wired differently." A knock at her open door pulled Emma from her reflection. A young woman stood there clutching a laptop, her expression hesitant but determined. "Director Torres, I'm Zoe Martinez. I'm in the cafeteria. I work in the student center cafeteria. I'm starting night classes in computer science at Bunker Hill Community College next month." Emma invited her in, immediately intrigued. "What can I do for you, Zoe?" The young woman opened her laptop. "I've been teaching myself to code between shifts. I saw your story and..." She paused, gathering courage. "I've been working on an algorithm for more efficient memory allocation in neural networks. It's probably amateur compared to what you do here, but show me," Emma said simply, pulling her chair around to see Zoe's screen. For the next hour, they pored over Zoe's code. It was rough in places, unconventional in its approach, but contained genuine insights that suggested real talent. "You have a natural intuition for this," Emma observed. "Some of these solutions are quite elegant." Zoe beamed at the praise. "Coming from you, that means everything." Emma considered the young woman thoughtfully, seeing echoes of her own journey. "Our lab has an internship program starting next semester. Flexible hours, designed to accommodate students with other commitments." She reached for a business card. "Send me your resume. I think you might be a good fit." Zoe's eyes widened. "Really? But I'm just starting my associate's degree. I don't have any formal qualifications yet." Emma smiled. "Neither did I when Dr. Chen found me at the diner. Sometimes the most interesting thinking happens outside traditional pathways." She handed Zoe the card. "The Torres architecture might never have existed if I'd followed a conventional route." After Zoe left, clutching the business card like a precious artifact, Emma turned to the window overlooking the MIT campus. Students traversed the paths between buildings, futures unfolding with each step. How many Zoes were out there, she wondered. Brilliant minds working in kitchens, cleaning offices, driving ride shares, their potential untapped simply because they hadn't followed prescribed paths. That evening, Emma drafted a proposal for a new initiative within her lab, the Alternate Pathways Program, designed to identify and support talented individuals from non-traditional backgrounds. It would offer mentorship, flexible learning opportunities, and concrete paths to research, positions regardless of formal credentials. "The next breakthrough might come from anywhere," she wrote in the introduction. "Our task is not just to advance AI technology, but to ensure we're drawing from the widest possible pool of human intelligence and creativity in doing so." 1 year after Emma's algorithm was first implemented in Sarah, MIT hosted an international conference on the future of artificial intelligence. The keynote address was delivered not by a veteran researcher or industry titan, but by Dr. Emma Torres, whose Torres architecture was now being implemented in research labs and tech companies around the world. Emma stood before the packed auditorium, momentarily reflecting on the journey that had brought her there. She thought of the diner, of those quiet hours between midnight and dawn when she'd coded by the light of her laptop, solving problems no one had asked her to solve simply because they fascinated her. The future of AI doesn't just depend on faster processors or bigger data sets, she told the assembled experts. It depends on reimagining how we approach cognition itself and who we include in that conversation. She described the principles behind the Torres architecture, how it enabled systems to form connections organically rather than through rigid, predetermined pathways. Then she shared early results from the Alternate Pathways program, which had already identified promising talents working as a hospital orderly, a long-haul trucker, and a daycare provider. Diversity of thought doesn't just make our field more equitable, Emma concluded. It makes our science better. The next transformative insight might come from someone who approaches problems from an angle we haven't considered. Someone whose life experience has taught them to see patterns where others see only noise. The ovation that followed was thunderous. As Emma left the stage, Dr. Chen met her at the steps, pride evident in his expression. "Changed the world yet?" he asked with a smile. "Just getting started," Emma replied. That night, a young waitress at an all-night diner across town served coffee to a tired-looking woman surrounded by textbooks and a laptop. The waitress paused, noticing complex code on the screen. "That looks interesting," she ventured. "I've been teaching myself Python on YouTube." The woman looked up, surprised, then smiled warmly. "Pull up a chair if you have a minute," she offered. "I'm working on something you might find fascinating." And so, another loop began. Another unexpected connection formed outside traditional pathways. The algorithm that had started in a diner continued to evolve, not just in the systems it powered, but in the lives it transformed, one midnight conversation at a time. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.